It's time now to get into the world of business, and as we do at this time of the programme, we delve into a chart of the day or a number of the day. And Francis, it's a Friday, but it's a big one, isn't it? Because we've had a really big political week, but important decisions are going to be made not too long from now.
Yeah, we can't breathe a sigh of relief just yet when it comes to economic news. And the graph of the day relating to ratings, because Moody's is expected to release a review of South Africa's credit rating. We are expecting that sometime tonight. It's largely expected to leave our credit rating unchanged. Ratings, of course, have been a major fear factor for South African economic players, even ordinary citizens, after two agencies moved South Africa into so-called junk status after President Jacob Zuma fired Pravin Gordhan as finance minister at the end of March. So let's show you graphically now where we stand. Both S&P and Fitch have put us below this line. They rate South Africa's foreign currency debt, which is tantamount to the main sovereign rating, as sub-investment grade or junk. So they're below the line. Moody's up here. Now, Moody's has traditionally seen us in a more positive light, but 2 months ago it did cut our rating to just one notch above this red line, so one notch above junk status. It's also given us a negative outlook, basically meaning that we are on a ratings watch. Since a lot of debt is denominated in rand, South Africa's local currency, not only the foreign currency, but the local currency assessment is also important. So where we are, Moody's has our rand debt also just one notch above junk status in investment grade, and so in fact does S&P, which has protected South Africa from some of the fallout from those downgrades that we saw in early April. Rating agencies have become increasingly concerned about policy uncertainty, which causes companies to hold back on investment. Also, political uncertainty as the ANC moves towards its policy conference. One of the biggest issues as well, a lack of growth. Ratings essentially, remember, assessing our ability to generate revenue to continue paying back debts. So growth is a factor, and South Africa entered a recession in the first quarter of the year. The Reserve Bank estimating growth of only 0.5%. Moody's also has a specific concern. Earlier it said it was worried that the Reserve Bank may be under political pressure after the public protector raised issue over its mandate, although of course she has since backtracked. Despite all of this, Moody's expected to keep us here, to give us a break basically, and keep the rating unchanged for now, we hope. Well, I'm joined on the line by an analyst in London who has a keen eye on South Africa. That's Nomura's emerging markets economist, Attard Montalto. Peter, thank you for joining us. Will Moody's give us a break? Do you think it will wait and see what the finance minister will do in the mini budget?
Good evening. Well, I think it's been too close since their last update on the 9th of June when Moody did downgrade. There's not really a dramatic amount of new information for them to really push South Africa over the edge into sub-investment grade. We think that information will eventually come with weak GDP prints to come, further downgrades to Moody's growth outlook, and also its fiscal underperformance to be seen in the MTBPS and in the budget next year. But we think it's more likely that Moody's will go maybe in March next year after the budget at that time.
It was quite a statement they made recently, Peter, about the Reserve Bank, about it possibly being under political pressure with that recent rating cut. Do you think that was a bit unfair? I personally do, because the Reserve Bank has always shown its independence.
Well, the SABC certainly is under a lot of political pressure, but they're very capable and able of defending themselves, I think is the best way to put it. I think Moody's and rating agencies are highlighting that there are institutional issues that we do have to keep an eye out. We have to be vigilant, I think, on the SABC. And remember, it was the cut to the institutional quality ratings around Perception's National Treasury, which forced S&P and Fitch over the edge. So it's definitely an important issue, but the SABC at the moment, under its current excellent management, is fully capable of defending itself.
Politics, a huge issue often spoken about by rating agencies, and looking at the reaction after Tuesday, do investors, maybe this is a sweeping statement, but do global investors want President Jacob Zuma in or out?
Well, I think they want a removal of uncertainty, and I think you could get it under a whole variety of different scenarios. I think there is a slightly overly simplistic view from some global investors who understand South Africa less well that would assume that if you remove Zuma, everything will be fine, and the ratings will be fine, growth will be fine. I think that's an oversimplification, certainly, of the much deeper structural problems which can't just simply be placed at the president's door, and they're much deeper than that. But the lack of market reaction this week, I think, partly reflected the fact that actually markets are quite tired of the whole political goings-on. It's a very complicated story and constantly evolving story for investors to keep track of.
The rand did weaken, not hugely, but it went to a one-month low. Is that perhaps because of, I guess, the vote highlighting the factionalism within the ANC, perhaps?
So partly, I think the global backdrop, which is viewed as more risky now, particularly what's going on around North Korea and America, the increase in the U.S. equity volatility index, VIX, is basically meaning that investors are focusing on a little more on the negatives in South Africa and highlighting them, as opposed to there necessarily being new factors. I think they're factoring in and looking at those factors a little bit more now than usual.
Peter, finally, would you agree, given the fact that we've had 2 cuts into junk, then a few reprieves, maybe another reprieve today, we've actually been spared a major fallout here? And is that because of our rand-denominated debt? Is that pivotal? Or are we lucky? Have we been lucky thus far because of all the other things happening in the globe, some of them pushing investors to emerging markets?
Well, I think on the rating agencies front, there's still an awful lot of benefit of the doubt that's being given to South Africa. And I think the problem is that will eventually run out. I don't think growth is going to emerge. I don't think unemployment is going to fall. I think inequality is going to fall. And ultimately, I think that does mean that South Africa ends up in sub-investment grade, almost regardless of some of the permutations through December. That does affect timing. But the portfolio flow issue is important as well. South Africa is in sort of a Goldilocks global macro backdrop at the moment. Huge amounts of money flowing into local market debt funds, passive funds that are then flowing and have to buy South Africa, and that's providing a very effective backdrop for the current accounts of South Africa at the moment.
All right, thank you so much for your time this evening. Peter Attard Montalto, emerging market economist at Nomura in London, and we will bring you the news as soon as it becomes available regarding Moody's latest review of South Africa.